The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Wisconsin.
He gets to reply with one of the greatest answers of all time when asked what he did after journalism school. There's a modest pause, and then he says, well, I won a Pulitzer. He'll reflect on that award in the state of print media, which is only appropriate because this show is called Wisconsin Reflections. Stay with us. These are times of seismic upheaval in the journalism trade, but in the midst of change, the constants become more important. There is nothing more powerful than a great investigative story where power is abused and graft is exposed. And if you do it well, your talent is exposed as well. And then you win a Pulitzer, which is what UW journalism grad Dave Umhoefer has done, and he is with us today. Dave, congratulations, first of all, on the
Thanks
Pulitzer.
a lot.
Can we just start with the moment where you won your Pulitzer? We've got some tape. If we could roll the tape. You're clustered around a computer terminal at the Journal Sentinel, and you found out you win. That's a big deal. How did that feel?
Well, you know, that's one of the most noticed videos on our website.
Yeah.
Readers love watching it.
People love winners.
Yeah, you know, it was a tough time in the business. The economy's bad. The newsroom really needed a boost at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think we had won a Pulitzer in 20 or 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there wasn't a lot of hype about the story, so it really came as a surprise to most people, and it was a great moment. I mean, you don't dare to dream about something like that.
Right.
You know, so it's sweet when it happens.
And you know, that stays with you for the rest of your life. It's a beautiful thing.
Right.
Tell us about the story itself. It was an expose on pensions and the Milwaukee County employees,
right,
and how they could buy back into a pension fund and end up realizing a profit of up to $300,000 for a $30 check.
Right. There's an inordinate number of people who are in management positions or were in Milwaukee County government who started out there in part-time seasonal jobs, lifeguards, you know, parks attendants,
grounds crews,
and so forth.
yeah,
that kind of job. Maybe just a summer job, maybe a couple weeks, and they figured out that they could credit themselves for that time. It's technical, but they moved their pension start date back to a time when it was a more lucrative pension formula.
Right, and then, but also they could have had jobs in the interim for 10 years.
Right.
But they.
Right, they left and then they came back.
Right.
And they decided after a time that they would kind of go back in time and lift that time from 30 years ago.
Retrofit their pension.
Right, exactly, and it was very lucrative. It was like I think we called it a cash machine for
$50 million.
Correct. Right. It was
spread over just 300 employees, roughly.
Right. Yeah. It was a little bit of like a word of mouth scheme where it was sort of not on the books.
Right.
But there was this sort of benefit that nobody knew about. There was whispers about it. If you knew the right person, they'd tell you.
One could even call it a scam.
It was a scam. It was a legal scam in the technical sense.
But doesn't make it any less of a scam.
That's right. That's right.
How did you catch wind of it?
Well, I covered county government for 5 years.
That's exciting.
Yeah, well, you know, for me it
turned
was.
out
That's
to
just
be.
the kind of guy I am.
You won a Pulitzer,
That's right. You know, this was something that was whispered about on the beat. It was like, you really ought to look into that. You think this is bad, look at that.
Did you get a tip?
I did get a tip.
Yeah.
I did get a tip. And
Tips
from
are nice,
a
aren't
great
they?
source, yeah. You know, unfortunately, it was the kind of story where you needed months to work on it.
And this was at a time, as you mentioned, the newspaper business was not raking in money, and yet they gave you the time and a couple accountants to dig. Good on them. Good on the Journal Sentinel.
Absolutely. I give great props to the editors of the paper. They made a huge commitment to investigative reporting. They gave us the time, the resources. You know, in the past, you might come up with a story like that. You get a couple weeks, you don't have it, you move on something else.
Right.
But
and how much digging had to be done?
Well, it was about 4 months of reporting and about 2 months of writing.
And you got some of the people who took advantage of this on the record.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was remarkable. You know, there was such a culture at Milwaukee County government of getting away with this sort of thing that they weren't really even afraid of a story, because once a pension benefit is granted, it's really hard to take it away. And they felt confident. They all wanted to get their side of the story and blame somebody else.
And it was perceived as legal.
Yeah, you know, there were some major IRS problems with it, which could have messed up the entire county pension system. But, you know, those kind of things are not in the front of their mind.
Well, as Everett Dirksen once said, 50 million here, 50 million there, and pretty soon you're talking big money.
That's right. Well, you know, the problem in Milwaukee County is that, you know, these pension payments just continue. A lot of these folks won't retire for 10, 20, 30 years, so it's going to continue to hurt county government for years to come.
Did working on that story and covering the beat that you covered, how has that affected your view of Wisconsin and national politics now, with Milwaukee County Board Exec Scott Walker ascending to the governor's office? You're in a unique position to offer some perspective.
Well, you know, Governor Walker obviously was Milwaukee County executive. His career began to take off when he took over the job. He followed an earlier pension scandal and kind of rode that wave as a Republican into office in this Democratic county.
As a reformer?
Yes, he promised to clean it up. You know, really, the problem had occurred. The horse was out of the barn, and there wasn't a lot he could do about it after the fact. But you know, they did make some changes, and he obviously did well politically in that job.
So he's made his bones by reforming government. So this is a familiar theme to come to Madison and to try to do the same thing, if in fact you can call what he's doing reform.
Well, you know, it was somewhat of a surprise how aggressive he was with the unions as governor, because he wasn't really that aggressive in Milwaukee County.
But the quote was that people weren't paying attention, that they should have seen this coming. Did you see it coming?
At the state level?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. And
Neither did I.
I've thought a lot about that because I covered him for 5 years. And, you know, it's a different playbook, because Milwaukee County government, Democratic county, I think he was pretty moderate in some ways. Some might disagree with that. But at the state level, you know, it's a different set of issues. He has his eye on the national stage to some extent.
Right.
And
do you think that's true, that he has national aspirations?
Well, you know, Governor Walker's always been ambitious. He was in the state legislature and had his eye on the next step. And I think, you know, he would like, I think, to continue to move on and move up.
He seems to be, I mean, obviously he's a very, very controversial figure. He seems to be a better communicator than he has appeared to be. I saw him on MSNBC, and I thought they're going to hang him out to dry, and he came across quite well on Morning Joe.
Oh, yeah.
And it made me wonder why he hasn't communicated more here. Are you surprised by that?
He's an extremely talented communicator. I mean, he's great with the media. He's unbelievably accessible to the public and to the media.
He was to you?
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, there were times when I would talk to him every day for weeks on end.
How would you characterize your relationship with him?
Oh, excellent.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, he was, you know, that's what you want in a public official. You want them to be open and accessible.
And so has what he has wrought surprised you?
You know, he moved on to a new level of government.
Right.
I think the major financial challenge they had at state government, he had to do something bold. I mean, he and I have debated about whether he campaigned on this. I did an item for Politifact, my current assignment, and we came to the conclusion that he really didn't prepare people for this. And he has since acknowledged that to some extent, that he should have done a better job preparing the public.
It's the how he did things that I think has taken some observers
I think
aback.
What he would say is that, you know, could he have gotten this across to the public in a campaign and survived the campaign?
Right.
You know, it would have been
good question.
It would have taken over the campaign probably.
Well, when we come back, I want to hear about your days at UW and J School, what you learned and how you've put it to work. How's that?
Great, sounds good.
We're with Dave Umhoefer, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner and a Badger. We'll be back. We're in Madison.
This program is a production of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. If you have comments about this broadcast, please email them to programming@uc.wisc.edu.
Nobody knows it like we do. Nobody celebrates it like we do. Nobody makes it happen like we do. Change. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison, it's everyone's major.
We're in Madison in the basement of Vilas Hall with Pulitzer Prize winner Dave Umhoefer from La Crosse originally, right?
That's right.
So how'd you make your way to Madison from La Crosse? Did you look at other schools, or?
I actually went to UW-La Crosse for a year.
Oh, you did? Okay, sure.
Shout out to UW-La Crosse. Following in the footsteps of my older brother Mark, who did the same thing, went to Madison as a sophomore.
Gotcha.
You know, it was a natural move. Madison's just so exciting. The campus was just an amazing experience.
What did you learn here?
Well, you know, I did a lot of work on the Daily Cardinal newspaper. So I was going to class. I was working, you know, through the afternoon well into the evening at the campus newspaper, competing against the Badger Herald, which was a new paper at the time.
Right.
So it was pretty exciting. I threw myself into that, and you learn a lot of real world lessons, make a lot of mistakes early. I think it gives you a big leg up in terms of getting that first job.
You know, I'd like to ask guys who men and women who come out of the journalism school from that era, one of the most amazing journalistic perspectives in the last 20 years came out of Madison, and that's the Onion. It's affected the discourse. That was right after you left, I'm assuming, you know, about within 5 to 10 years after you left. Does the Onion growing out of this Madison culture, does that surprise you?
Not at all. You know, one of the publishers of the Onion, Steve Hanna, was the guy who, among the people who hired me at the Journal-Sentinel.
Oh,
okay. It was a Milwaukee Journal at the time. So I've got an extra perspective on that. You know, probably the only thing that surprises me about the Onion is they didn't do it earlier. You know,
Right.
I mean, if you go back to Madison's culture, the Kentucky Fried Theater and all that stuff, improv.
Exactly.
So it was waiting to happen.
Well, I find it interesting how it's affected all channels of media now. I mean, it begat Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, and now you see headlines on CNN and stuff that look like they were written by an Onion headline writer, just because there's this wink and a smile now with some of these stories.
It's hard to tell the difference now between real news, fake news.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which gets back to, now talk to me about Politifact.
Sure.
That is an online investigative network, correct?
Right. It was really the first fact-checking service, national fact-checking service. Politifact.com won a Pulitzer Prize, I think 2 years ago, and they've now franchised this. It's taking hold across the country. I think we were the 7th state or so to do it. We work closely with them. They work closely with us. When the Madison stuff blew up, the protests over Governor Walker's budget, we went into hyperdrive in conjunction with our national folks, and we did, I think, 40 fact checks in 23 days or something. And
yeah, there were a lot of different versions of stories flying around.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. You know, on the truthometer that we use, the pants on fire is the worst kind of egregious lie.
Right. No, I've seen that. I've seen your folks. I don't know. Maybe I've seen you as well. And I love that because it's a voice in the wilderness.
Yeah, well, it's a wildly popular feature. You would not believe the reader feedback that we get just thanking us for, especially during campaigns, the recalls, the budget mess. Anytime there's TV ads running and they get in people's heads and they don't know what to believe, and it can start to drive you crazy.
You know, I'm not one of these folks who thinks that the web is terrible and journalism has gone to hell. I find it to be a very exciting time, and that journalism will catch up with it and be better for it. You know, WikiLeaks and everything. Are you of that mind, or do you think I'm wrong?
I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that way.
Oh, good.
I'm pretty optimistic.
And plus, researching and finding stuff out is easier.
Well, look at Politifact. I mean, it's open-ended space. We cite all our sources, all laid out. It gives you the chance to go in depth, yet in a clever format where people can dip in, you know, look at the meter, read the summary. It's attractive. You're getting in-depth.
It's got hooks.
Yeah,
it's got some hooks.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And you're building an educated audience.
Yep.
And there's advertising on it. It works.
And it's accessible in a way that newspapers on paper with ink weren't. And the news cycle is so fast now.
Right.
That's the thing that amazes me, is that the industry, the newspaper industry, we were talking during the break, it's not that the journalists got any worse, it's that the management didn't anticipate this change. And they weren't innovators. They were paid not to be innovators.
Well, success breeds
I'm talking
complacency
here.
in
Right.
any realm, whether it's baseball team or whatever.
Right.
And plus, let's face it, it's a revolution. It's an information revolution. We're in a transitional period.
Yep.
We'll look back on it and it'll all make sense 30 years from now. But
I'll tell you, when I saw that Kindle was offering a $199 tablet called Fire, I thought, game on. Everyone will have this tablet, and now it'll be easier to monetize journalism, I would argue, because there'll be more eyeballs, and they'll all move to the digital platform.
Well, we're pretty excited. The Journal Sentinel is going to roll out its iPad app in January or February. That's
I already
the schedule.
have one. There must be a new. Oh,
well, that's the mobile phone app.
Right.
Yeah.
So on the iPad. Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So we're excited about
the Wisconsin
that.
State Journal has rolled out an iPad app already.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not too bad. I was stunned at how good it was actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a number of people will pay something for our product in that format.
Well, I've noticed the Journal Sentinel now with sports has an annual app for the Brewers, the Packers, and they're still covering those beats in ways that the other state newspapers are not. So you're still throwing some people against those beats.
Oh yeah, the Packers are a huge franchise for us.
Right.
We actually are selling our Packers coverage to some papers in the state.
To other papers, including the Wisconsin State Journal.
Yeah, it's
so is the Press Gazette, I think. And that, I have to say, I don't think that's all bad. You don't need 80 guys interviewing an offensive lineman in the locker room,
especially when you have Bob McGinn, the dean of football writers in the country, working for us.
What are you? What were your student days like? Were you a good student here at UW, or were you? Did you take part in the fun-loving attitude of the Madison campus as well as the hardworking Midwestern?
Are we on the record?
Yeah.
Well, I did it all.
You know enough not to ask if you're always on the record.
That's right. I did it all. I was a good student. I probably spent more time as a senior down in the basement of Vilas Hall right here, working at the Cardinal. I was able to. I have a kind of a photographic memory, so I was able to,
Good for you.
Absorb things really fast and kind of get away with it. But I had some inspiring profs. Jim Boffman, who's still teaching here the history in the J School. It was a great time to be here.
Heady time, fun time.
Well, it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. I was in the old Og Hall, which is since torn down.
Was that your first freshman year dorm?
Oh yeah. That was fun. That was fun. Survived that. Just hung around Southeast, busy all the time.
Yep.
It was great.
When we come back, let's talk more about where you think it's going, because Wisconsin's J School has really kicked out some great folks. But this digital revolution has caused people to think that journalism is dead. And I share your sentiment. I think that actually it's rife with opportunity now, if you're nimble enough.
Sure.
So when we come back, I'd like you to, instead of looking back, I'd like you to kind of
Where's my crystal ball?
Exactly. It's exactly what I'm asking for. Good. We'll be right back. We're in Madison. Stay with us. Pulitzer Prize.
This program is a production of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. If you have comments about this broadcast, please email them to programming@uc.wisc.edu.
Hey, we're with Dave Umhoefer out of La Crosse, who went to Wisconsin J School, and then he won a Pulitzer.
Nice
what
summary.
are you going to do?
Nice summary. I like that.
Let's look in the crystal ball. Everyone's going to have a tablet. Information is accessible 24/7. There's no such thing as a 24-hour news cycle or a 12-hour news cycle or a 12-minute news cycle. So how are we going to get our information? How are we going to know that it's credible journalism?
You know, I don't want to sugarcoat this. I mean, we talked a little bit about our optimism, but, you know, we've lost so many people, so many talented people, and you have to have, you know, boots on the ground, as they say, to be following government. You have to be in the room for there to be any subsequent investigation of what's going on. You have to know what's happening.
And government is complicated. And people in government who may be up to no good want it to be complicated.
Sure, sure.
And confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a labor-intensive business covering government, and you know, we just don't have the bodies that we used to, which means that we've had to go to these strategies of kind of picking our niche, identifying certain bread and butter things that we need to follow, doubling up on those, or doubling down, as the cliche goes now, and you know, just pouring our resources into that.
Do you see that changing? Do you see the platform becoming monetized to the point where where newspapers, or it's not papers anymore, it's news organizations, okay, news platforms, can reinvest in people to cover it, to go to those city council meetings where the decisions that affect everyone are made?
I think that eventually will sort itself out. It has to. There's a market there, hyper-local coverage.
Yep.
There's still advertising there. There's
Payment
still,
models, you know, pinprick payments or subscription models.
Right.
Or
I mean, you see Patch.com. You know, it'll be covered in some way, shape, or form. Not the way we used to, in the sense of that volume of coverage, but it has to get covered, and somebody will find a way to make money on that.
Right.
You know.
What's your take on Twitter?
You know, I'm on it. I don't use it a great deal. It's a great marketing tool. It's a great way to watch a live news event unfold. You know, the Capitol protests.
Or a breaking news event.
Right.
That literally an earthquake. You search on Twitter and you're getting citizen journalism.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we use it on Politifact. You know, people are more and more relying on that. Their friends to refer news stories to them. Right. And you know, we'll go along. We'll do that. I think it has to be part of the marketing package.
What do you think of the term citizen journalism?
You know,
is it an oxymoron?
No, I don't know. You know, I've changed my mind a little bit on that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of quote amateur journalism being done, but there's also a lot of really smart people who are insiders on a certain topic who are passing along information in a much deper form than we ever did.
I read the message boards sometimes, and it's like Tip Central.
Right.
It's people, I've had an issue about message boards where people don't use their real name, but then you read some of the stuff and you know why they can't use their real name, and they add perspective to these columns or these articles that never existed before. But then you have to try to vet them and think, well, is that real or not?
That's okay. You know, it's no different than the anonymous phone calls we used to get.
Right, it's no different than it used to be.
It's actually more detailed. There's more of it.
Right.
Of course, you have to wade through, you know, 97 pounds of trash to find those good
Speaking
comments.
of wading through trash, what's your media day like? When you get up in the morning, do you read stuff online? Do you read a newspaper? How do you take in your information these days?
Well, you know,
as a Pulitzer Prize winner.
I still get the newspaper at home. I get the New York Times, the Journal-Sentinel. With the iPhone, I just, for a variety of practical reasons, like digesting news on that. It's great. And you know, the iPad's going to make it even easier, especially for old guys with bad eyes. You know, and you know, it's 24/7 now. Let's face it, we're all up at midnight checking our email and reading stories.
I found out about Osama bin Laden being killed on Facebook from a buddy in the WABC newsroom.
What time?
Totally scooped the network. Had it.
Really?
Had it first.
Really?
And I passed it along first. Broke on Facebook.
I heard it on the radio.
How's that for old school?
Exactly.
Hey, Dave, I'm so happy. Are you going to stay in Milwaukee, or are you going to go to work for the New York Times?
No, I'm staying.
Are you?
Yep.
Good for you. Well, good and good for them. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Thanks for having me.
Great to see a J School guy do so well and just drop that Pulitzer bomb anywhere you go now. That's pretty nice, huh?
Thanks a lot. Sometimes it gets me a free drink.
There you go,
Yep.
which is great.
You bet.
Some things in journalism never change.
That's value.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Join us again on Wisconsin Reflections on Wisconsin, everybody. See ya.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Wisconsin in association with the Big Ten Network.